Speaking the truth to the state capitol. This is Drive Time Lincoln with the Commander, Jack Riggins, on the voice of Lincoln, 1499.3 KLIN.
All right, folks, whatever Wednesday, December 28th here, last show of 2022. I'm your host, Jack Riggins, always trying to restore American values, bring sound, tell a little common sense to the capital city. Johnny Cadillac is executive producing the show, and Natalie Weiss is back in studio. Last interview of 2022. Welcome, Natalie.
Hey, Jack. So good to be here.
We have no idea what we're going to do for the show. It is kind of a whatever Wednesday, so we'll throw the call lines open. You should know the number by now. The Rick Stein Recognition Hotline is 402-479-1400. Had a look at it. Yesterday, before we get to Natalie, somebody asked, and it was a good question. I think they asked off air, but they asked, what's the immigration population? Because we were just talking about the border and some of the different dynamics down there based on my family Christmas party blowing up over border security. Oh, yes, of course, right? Here you go, folks. In our welcoming and belonging and strategic plan right there at lincoln.ne.gov, the numbers are there. The plan, if you haven't read it, is on the website. It's a very well thought out plan. You can go back and see all the effort that was put into it. And so to answer that question, it just says between 2014 and 19, the county's population increased by 6.5%, while the immigrant population grew by 16.2%, meaning over 18% of the total population growth was attributable to immigrants. So I don't know if that makes sense to you. When I try to do my basic common sense math, it's about 1 in every 10. If you look at those numbers, right, we're growing a little faster with immigrants than we are, say, transplants from other parts of the United States. That shouldn't surprise anybody. Lincoln's been a very welcoming town, hence the welcoming and belonging plan. As a matter of fact, one of our big awards and things that we champion is our Gateways for Growth Challenge, where we've been, one of 20 cities, I think, in 2020, but there's more cities now that are trying to put programs to make certain communities attractive. So there you go. I mean, the other thing I would say that's of note in there, and there's a lot of data between lincoln.ne.gov, the Immigrant Welcome and Belonging Plan, as well as about Gateways for Growth, is the numbers, probably because of the University of Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math workers that we have. So the immigrant population is overrepresented in that, as well as in manufacturing and hospitality, and it's pretty steady in their population in education, essential foods, and essential construction workers. So somebody wanted the data, and that's the data. Like I've said before, I have no problem with immigration. As a matter of fact, I don't think America can exist without immigration. It makes us diverse. It gives us a whole lot of ideas. It's actually the strength of our country. And so I welcome it. I have a problem with every elected official for about 60 years and the broke immigration and accession programs and laws that we have that are not modern, that are not healthy, that cause human catastrophes on both sides, and that needs to be fixed, and that's what I think our elected officials should do. Depending on where we're at border-wise, if it surges, then I'm going to be all on fire. If it's down a little bit, I'm not going to be as on fire. In the end of the day, we haven't solved that problem, and we want people to come here, and we want it to be humane. Yes, I don't think Joe Biden's doing a good job, but at the same time, the entire nation isn't and hasn't for 60 years. So it's something we should work towards. That's my point. Natalie, welcome.
Jack, it's so good to be here.
That was my monologue. That's what we call that in radio.
That was good stuff.
All right, here you go. I'm going to give you the first question. We don't know what we're doing here.
Oh, man. We've got no clue, do we?
It's as if I'm your guest. Or Johnny. Ask Johnny a question.
Johnny, how was your Christmas?
It was all right.
Yeah?
I spent time with family, so...
Good. Good.
Yeah, we had a little nice lady on Christmas Eve sitting with us at Shogun who decided, because she appreciated me taking care of my mom, that she was buying our dinner that night. And I found out after she paid the ticket. So
Christmas cheer at Shogun.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool.
It was.
And you didn't have any contentious political conversations like the Riggins family?
No.
That's good. That's a big plus.
So, no, she was there by herself. So, and at Shogun, the way the tables are positioned it's very common to sit next to somebody you don't know. And if she was there by herself, I didn't mind including her in our conversations.
And free dinner out of the deal.
Yeah. Well, that wasn't my intention, but.
Well, you say that.
No, that was awful nice. There's a lot of nice Christmas cheer out there. And one thing I do know that most people don't is Johnny does a great job taking care of his mother and family. And that's very respectable.
Maybe you should have him over and play peacekeeper with your family.
No, what happens is you get drug into the mud.
You drug into it?
You get thrown into the jungle.
Maybe that would work out.
Close the doors.
Match, bring the commissioner over.
I know a thing or two about wrestling commissioning.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, maybe that would work out.
Well, my family, some of them are older, and listen, we all know with some old people, they're not going to change their ways.
That's true.
So we were happy for the 4 hours of good Christmas we got.
Hey, 4 hours is 4 hours.
And then we just had a healthy debate about America. That's
just healthy, and someone had to leave.
Hey, tell me, I got a question for you. How was Minnesota?
It was good.
I bragged on the air quite a few times that Republicans had a better chance than not here in Nebraska because Natalie wasn't on the ground getting out the vote. And I said, you're all screwed up in Minnesota. But did you enjoy that?
Yeah, we had a really good election cycle up there. Some pretty big wins. It was looking like the top of the ticket was a little bit shaky there on election night. I think in a lot of Democratic places across the country there was some nerves on election night. But, we ended up with the governor, both houses of the state legislature up there, the attorney general, and the secretary of state.
Well, I got to say is with all the crap that's been going on in Minnesota lately, it, by God, better be Democrat. They better just lock that one down, Democrat.
It's nice to have a blue state in the Midwest. It's definitely nice.
Oh, I can't even consider that the Midwest, but you're right, it is.
It is.
It is. They're Midwest people. We're on with Natalie Weiss. In case some of you forgot, I always say a trans activist as well as, a Democrat. I don't want to say operative. I just want to say playa, like really valued member of the Democrat apparatus and getting out the vote and talking policies and strategies, not just here in Nebraska, but nationwide, and obviously in the trans and LGBTQ community, yes. Which, is underrated. As a matter of fact, all of my introductions around here have been because of you, and I appreciate that.
Oh, well, shucks. That's very generous of you to say.
I still can't get over, somebody else brought up, remember last time you were on the show, we talked about certain demographics being used as political footballs. And this is switching it a little bit, but I've noticed of late, maybe because of the schools, it's as if now we're also switching to kids as political footballs and some issues. And I'm like, why do we got to do that?
A little bit. I think that on big social issues, the country has a little bit of a history, I guess you could say, of using school children, using the classroom setting. As sort of a linchpin for a lot of these things. We were seeing that during the civil rights movement too. A lot of parents saying that it was confusing for children to have mixed race classrooms, and I think that a lot of the trans stuff that we're hearing today is sort of a continuation of that. It's very easy to use the innocence of children in the political sphere.
Do you think the arguments repeat themselves kind of if it was like segregation back in the day, whether we'll use black, white, and so then this argument gains traction and then we just kind of turn it to, straight and kids that are trans or something like that because the arguments just emotionally grab people?
I think that has something to do with it. I think that adults have a little bit of trouble vilifying adults with other adults, but if you can vilify other adults in the context of children, all of a sudden that becomes a more palatable thing for the public to sort of digest.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Or jump on board to, I guess, one way or the other. We'll be back here with Natalie Weiss on KLAN 1499.3.
You're getting the 411 from DTL with Commander Jack Riggins on 1499.3 KLIN.
All right, we're back here on a whatever Wednesday, December 28th, last Drive Time Lincoln of the year. We've got Natalie Weiss on board, talking a lot of things. We always talk a lot of things on and off air. We kind of finished off just talking about circular arguments within the normalization of trying within the trans community to get equality, and how sometimes the arguments that we're trying to push for at a larger level, maybe older, kind of go down to the kids because fear tends to drive Americans to, kind of get interested. But you bring up a good point, which is at the same time in normalizing, which is what anybody who doesn't matter whether it's, race, whether it's, the way you look or, the size of your body to, your sexual beliefs and preferences, that begins earlier. And you always make compelling arguments about why educating young people is not quote unquote grooming. I don't like that word. Both sides are using that word. And what you discuss is education. So the percentages of people that are out there know what it is, and others know that exists in our society.
Yeah, I think but Nebraska and really the country is dealing with a lot of talk around shifting sex education standards and whether or not trans people should be discussed in public school settings. And if we're interested in making a society that's better in the future, that's more accepting of people of different beliefs, then we need to start teaching kids that those people exist and start creating respectful situations while they're young so that they grow up into respectable adults.
What's interesting to me, having kids kind of in the middle school, high school, and beyond, is that regardless of the formal education or not, they are aware of this, just through society, whether it's TV, whether it's parents. So if you were to ask Joe Average kid on the street, I would say 7th grade and above, they are aware of this and probably can tell you about some of their students. And for the most part, if they're not inundated by one side or the other of the political argument, they don't have judgment. Just like any kids, I mean, they may think somebody's weird, but, people thought I was weird because I have olive skin. People think somebody else is weird because they're tall, and there's a maturation that takes place. And so, yeah, it is going to be a continued, I think, discussion, certainly in this state. Is there anything you're aware of? I'm kind of getting off topic, but not really, with legislative wise coming up that, in that vein, whether it be the school that you're interested in?
Yeah, it does look like we're probably going to be seeing a bill that will pertain to a medical transition ban. We're not entirely certain what that's going to look like, but we're anticipating it being introduced into committee at the very least.
So to outlaw a transition, as it's illegal to do that?
Yeah, that's our understanding of what the language would look like, that it would be illegal for medical practitioners to prescribe hormone treatment, therapy, or any surgeries, and it would be illegal for a trans person to receive that care.
I'm going to say right now, I don't have all the facts. I don't like that.
We don't either.
I don't like that because there's an individual decision there, and clearly it's in medical care, and I don't know why I, as a taxpaying citizen, should care if that's what you want to do and you feel it's in the best interest. Now, I don't have all the facts, people, so, we're just trying to talk through it. But that would seem a little extreme to me.
I would agree that seems definitely very extreme. I don't want to get too contentious about these things, but the conservative movement that likes to talk about trans people, which I think most listeners can agree definitely does exist. There is a conservative movement in this country and in this state that really likes to talk about trans people in all sorts of different capacities. That movement fears trans people. Now, I don't mean to say that they're up at night, in night sweats and having nightmares about trans people, but I use fear. They don't want trans people in society. They don't want normalization of trans people. They don't want to see trans people in positions of power. They don't want to see trans people in public-facing positions. They just don't want us to be around. The easiest way to do that, from a political perspective, is to start electing people who will introduce laws that would make our lives harder to live. And some of that includes bans on medical care for trans people. Some of that is talking about sports bans for trans students who would like to participate in extracurricular activities. Some of that has to do specifically with child-related trans care, puberty blockers, whether or not a young person is even able to be aware of who they are or not. And these conservatives like to, they latch onto something and they put a law out there, they try to get it passed. And I think that the goal here is to make trans people unpalatable for society and to make society unpalatable for trans people. They don't want society to be a friendly place for trans people.
Do you think it's a minority or a loud minority, or do you think there's an undercurrent there that is kind of seething, that is like, well, I'm not going to say it, but I'll support underneath the table?
That's a much more difficult question to ask. It certainly drives voter turnout for conservatives. I don't think that there's any real question about that.
Well, I'm not going to disagree with you on this, because you and I have talked a lot about this. One thing I've noticed, being a purveyor of information and firing up people, is fear does seem to be, on the conservative side, one of the, if not the number one driver of getting people off their butt just to go vote.
Yeah.
Right. And it may not even be, because that's a question I'm going to ask you, so think about it, which is, what are some other like top issues? Like I would say, okay, law and order, inflation, border crisis, our standing in the international community. However, in order to get a conservative in Lincoln, Nebraska to vote about that, which is to vote for a Republican in my case, then I've got to cry about, law and order in Lincoln. I'm going to cry about Zuckerbucks. These things that at this point, like Zuckerbucks is handled. Yet I've got to cry about it to get them so fired up they'll go vote, when in fact I'm hoping that vote will carry on in those bigger issues.
Right. It translates into people getting voted in.
Again, I love to show you behind the curtain, folks.
Yeah, I think that now whether or not there's a majority among conservatives, among Republicans who personally believe in this vilification of trans people, I don't know. I think that there are probably a lot of conservative Republican leaning voters in this country who don't have a lot of personal experience with the LGBT community, especially trans people, don't know a trans person, don't have a trans person in their family. And that ignorance of what being trans is and what a life of a trans person looks like can translate to some mean-spirited votes, I guess, for lack of a better term.
Or a better term would be uneducated thinking, uneducated guessing, opinions, maybe.
Right. And, if you're in a society like Nebraska where a lot of people just look at that D or the R next to the name, and that's where they're going with it. They don't really pay attention to the talking points. They're not really paying attention to the ads or the debates or anything like that. They're just, does it have an R and a D next to it? And that's the way I'm voting, because that's how my pappy voted, and my grandpappy, you've spoken like a true Nebraskan. Yeah. I think that there's a lot of that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, do conservatives in Western Nebraska really care about trans issues? Probably not so much. But will those things go and drive them to vote for other Republicans? Probably.
All right, 1499.3 KLIN.
Drive Time Lincoln with the Commander, Jack Riggins, on the voice of Lincoln, 1499.3 KLIN.
All right, folks, we're closing up the show here. About 8 minutes left. We've got Natalie Weiss on today. We're not kicking it off. We're ending 2022 here with her, talking some LGBTQ trans issues, some bigger political issues, a little the way politics operates in America with fear at times on different issues. I had asked before, big picture items, like what are some things outside of, your activism as an American that you're concerned about with our country or the world?
Oh gosh, man.
Or maybe a better question would be what good hopes for 2023?
Good hopes for 2023. Well, oh no. Oh God, I'm such a pessimist that I can't think of a single good hope for 2020.
You wouldn't be alone. A new survey said that like 60% of Americans are down on
the new
hopes
year
for 2023.
I hope it's better than 22. How about that? I don't know. Big stuff. This Ukraine thing is definitely concerning, I think, for a lot of Americans, especially who pay attention to international politics. We've got a new Congress coming in, which is a big thing for all Americans, of course. We're officially into the 2024 presidential cycle now. How about that?
Oh boy,
we're done with November, and now it's presidential time. We've already got a candidate.
We do have a candidate. Actually, I'm surprised because you will go, oh yeah, that too. We actually have a mayor's race here in Lincoln, Nebraska.
We've got that also coming up this spring, which will be a very big one.
That'll be a big one. If any of the local races in the last November election were a precursor, I expect it to be nasty. I expect it to be expensive. And I expect it to be no holds barred and very close either way.
I think that's all pretty accurate. Actually, I think that's it'll probably be very contentious and very expensive and probably pretty close.
Yeah, I think it'll be close. In the end of the day, I think people on both sides are fooling themselves if they think that Lincoln can, shift hard one way or the other. I mean, I know through the COVID years, there has been more Democrats in office. But I still think that Lincoln is a pretty balanced town. I'll get into a lot of fights between D and R and nonpartisan when we do these things where we say we're nonpartisan. What's better? I mean, in the end of the day, I think that what people are looking for is people that represent all of the people within the city. And I also think there's things, and I've said this to you, Natalie, I'll say it again on air. I think that with the fairness ordinance being such a hot topic in 2022, I think we missed the ball in the sense of there's a piece of that for equal rights and not having you report federal that I think we should be able to pass like lickety split. Meaning under the Supreme Court's law and judgment, there is no reason that as a city we shouldn't be able to pass that like yesterday so that our folks in those communities can report locally. I think that is a very fair and something that would be welcomed and also a start.
Yeah, I would agree with you. The problem is that our city code, our city charter allows the citizenry to petition any decision that the city council makes. And as soon as you start talking about LGBT issues, I think that there's enough people in this city who are willing to sign a petition that would put that up to a vote. And as soon as you've got a public vote on it, well, now it's a civic discussion. It's not a governmental discussion anymore. It's not something that's happening in the city council, at City Hall. It's a civic discussion at that point.
Yeah, I wish we could go back in time and just have, as I like when I go back in the time machine, not the whole enchilada, just like that piece to see if it causes a reaction that you think it will. I don't think it will if it's socialized early and people understand it. But I do agree with you. If it's more than that and it's kind of not socialized, it tends to get the right turn Clyde thing and everybody just piles on.
Yeah. I mention them all of the time. The Nebraska Family Alliance and the Nebraska Catholic Conference are diametrically opposed to LGBT equality in the city of Lincoln, in the county of Lancaster, in the state of Nebraska. And I think anytime that there is a bill in the legislature or an argument being made in a locale, in a municipality, they're going to be there trying to put the brakes on it, and they're going to put their weight behind it. They're going to do their petition gathering. They're going to get their testifiers to come in front of the committee at the legislature or whatever the case may be, and they're going to be there really sounding that negative argument that they like to make.
Factor.
Yeah, that fear factor. And I don't. unless those organizations suddenly have a big come to Jesus moment, not to
That's a great analogy.
Unless they have some very big shift in their thinking, I don't think that there's a way that these issues are going to be able to be discussed in Lincoln or in this state without them making a big stink of it and making it a huge civic discussion.
Here's one for you. Change the subject. Are the Cornhusker football team on a better path? Do you think that will be a better 2023 thing?
Oh, man. Gosh. Prediction. I suppose we're in Lincoln, Nebraska. Predictions. Well, Matt Rule, he's making some good decisions. He's saying a lot of things. Certainly has won the press conference. It's done a good job with that. He's got a track record of turning around some pretty low, down and out college programs.
There's reason for hope.
Yeah, there's reasons for hope. I think there's lots of reasons for hope.
Now, you're a basketball fan, too.
I am a big basketball fan.
Our basketball programs are doing pretty good.
I think so.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Let's jump to the NBA. Do you have any front runners in the NBA?
Well, that's a good question. I think it's hard to count out Golden State. They're not having the greatest season right now, but gosh, it's hard to count them out.
It is hard to count them out.
Memphis looks good. Dallas looks good. I mean, Luka Doncic just had, a 30-20-10 the other night?
Crazy.
Or a 60-20-10.
Yeah.
It's incredible, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they're a lot of fun to watch.
I don't know how you don't have, major ice on your wrists after shooting a ball, that many times.
You ever heard him talk about how he's convinced it's easier to score in the NBA than Europe?
I've went to a couple European games when I lived over there, and I will tell you what,
defense.
They play basketball like it's full court.
Yeah.
Like Dion, it's like kids play in high school when they're playing for state championships.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Like just everything.
All out. It's so intense.
It was very interesting where the NBA does that when they choose to do that.
Yes, that's right. When they choose to do that, right?
Yeah.
All that
Well, they have long.
shaving.
I mean, I don't know what the season's. Johnny, does that mean we're off air?
No.
Oh God! No!
Oh no! Johnny got a little excited for 2023. Johnny, how much time do we have?
We have 33 seconds.
Okay, 33 seconds.
Well,
Natalie,
go Huskers.
Yeah, go Huskers. Go Golden State.
Go Golden State.
Go America.
Go America.
And let's all get along better and solve problems.
Let's solve problems in 2023.
All right. Natalie Weiss, thanks for coming on Drive Time
Thanks
Lincoln.
so much for having me, Jack.
Johnny, that is what we call an accidental discharge in the military, an AD. I think that's the first time. But what a great way to end 2022 with Johnny hitting the buttons early. That's it. We'll see you in 2023. KLIN 1499.3.